are Locked On Wildcats, your daily podcast on the Arizona Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Monday, and thanks for listening to Locked On Wildcats. Thanks for making it your first listen of the day. I am your host, Mike Luke, with John Schuster. All right, now, keeping with the whole strategy of what, players leaving early, we were talking about it, and, Arizona's got a remarkably good history about, you don't see a lot of guys that left, and you're like, what the heck are you doing right there? And the ones that you did say that, Gilbert Arenas, is looking back at me and saying, what the heck were you thinking, doubting me right there? There aren't really that many guys. And, just go back, obviously, with Sean Elliott, obviously, first. He was a guy that could have left, but like we were talking about earlier, I don't think there was ever really much talk about it.
I don't think there was. And it was a very different mentality at that point. A mentality that I think, generally speaking, changed when Kevin Arnett is an
he's also a
different
musician.
Guy. Yes, really good. The brother of a really good comedian too. Really versatile guy, and decided he was going to go pro. But he was overshadowed by a guy named Kevin Garnett, who did go pro, and I think that played a fairly big role, I think, in changing the dynamic and the willingness of players to leave early for the league. Up until that time, it happened, but it wasn't as, the pendulum was completely swung on that. Now you don't expect a good prospect, a 4 or 5 star prospect, to stay for 4 years. Prior to Garnett, it was very possible they were staying for 3 and probably 4. So there's a lot that's obviously changed in that. And when you're looking at Arizona players and players for any school, that is noteworthy from a high prospect standpoint. That's something that you've long since had to deal with as being a very realistic possibility. Elliott played in an era where he could have left early, certainly could have left after his junior year and been drafted high, and decided to come back, and probably wasn't even really much of a thought. And it didn't hurt him either. He had a very good career, played for a lot of years, and made a lot of money in the NBA.
All right, the first guy that came there, and I think, now listen, was there any real talk about Damon leaving?
Not that I recall.
Yeah, I don't really remember
I don't recall that happening. It may have been tossed around a little bit.
But so Mike Bibby was the first one that came in, and you're like, all right. I mean, because keep in mind, that was after the post-Kevin Arnett era.
Yes.
And Bibby's
the legendary Kevin Arnett.
Yes, and Bibby's coming in, and he's obviously, he's mega recruit. Everybody knows who he is. And you could tell very early on that, this guy is probably not going to be a 4-year player. This is not going to be the Matt Othick steady hand.
It's also going to be, that was nice of you to put the hand in front of my face.
I know. Right. It's such a little head.
It was easy to cover. It was also the change in the U of A era where you started to recognize that Arizona was so good as a program that they weren't going to get 4-year players to stay here either. That the penalty for your success was that to continue to be successful, you had to get players who used college as a stepping stone to the NBA, who overtly used college as a stepping stone to the NBA. And certainly for Arizona, that happened pretty much from the Bibby era on.
Now you were covering it up close. I know that you loved covering high school basketball back then.
Nothing like it.
Yeah, for sure. But you and your buddy, also named John. You're fully aware. Now he's
currently at home.
Yeah, I was going to say, is he nice?
Yes.
Was the expectation with you two was that this is probably a 2-year kid.
Yeah, absolutely. 2 year was the expectation. And 2 years.
If you could maybe sneak a third.
If you can sneak a third, you're taking it.
But if he's there 4 years, something went wrong.
When he was a senior in a high school, Mike Bibby was a 2-year player at the University of Arizona. So him coming back after the first year when they won wasn't a surprise. Neither was him leaving after his sophomore season. And obviously there were loyalists out there who could make the argument, well, I think he needs to come back because he needs to work on. But I mean, that's silly. And he was the number 2 pick in the draft and parlayed a 12-year career out of it. He did just fine.
You know what's funny about that? And first of all, what's not funny is Built Bar. Mike Bibby, if you look at Mike Bibby now, a lot of people are saying steroids. I say no. I say Built Bar. again, Built Bar has a huge presence in the Valley.
Mm-hmm.
Mike Bibby lives in the Valley.
There's a bunch of GNCs where you can get Built Bar.
Look me in the eye and say you can say for a fact that Mike Bibby does not consume Built Bar. You can't.
I can't do it.
Right. So again, Built Bar, check it out. Mike Bibby endorsed, even though it's not. Even though it's not, I'm just making that up. Let's take a quick break. Thanks for keeping it.
I wanted to do something different during the break portion to keep it.
Thanks for keeping it locked on. Oh, guy that we forgot about that I felt was probably a 3-year player when I saw him, or looked like an early entry candidate, and he was Richard Jefferson.
You thought Jefferson was a 3-year player?
I thought Jefferson was a 3-year guy.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, when he came in, you could, again, he wasn't like Bibby precocious, but you could tell that, there's a lot to work with there. He had a great body, NBA body.
Yes.
A super athlete.
So when you say 3, you were not surprised that he did not come back for a senior season.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah. He just looked like, and here's the thing too. If you were to ask me on that team, who is the best pro prospect, I would have actually said at that time, because keep in mind, in my defense, this was a little bit before the smaller guards came into being popular and everything. I would have thought it was Richard Jefferson, because I thought he was a very easy pick. I thought everybody loves the term upside and downside.
Right. Sometimes it's not bad to go for a sure thing.
I felt very, listen, now he was a 22 point per game guy for like 4 or 5 years, but I thought that, all right, worst case scenario, this guy's an NBA starter for 10 years and he's averaging 12 to 15 a game.
And that's about what happened.
By the way, Miami definitely going to run away with this, but go ahead.
All right. Yeah. That's and his career. It really is interesting to look back at the Arizona track record in terms of the number of players who were in the league for 8 to 14 years. And one of them in Iguoudala. How many years has Iguoudala been playing now?
Right.
What is it, 17, 18, 19,
years,
something like that?
Right, exactly. And you get the sense, too, that he could be a guy that'll keep coming back if they want him to. And he's still playing. Our guy, Matty M, messaged me yesterday, and he said, Andre with the big dunk.
Yep.
Andre, Matt, who's not a journalist.
He's not a journalist, so you can call people by their first name. Then again, neither is Mike Luke, so he can call people by their first names too. There's an inside joke that drives me nuts, but that's okay.
It's for sure, because Schuster is my mentor, so
Mike likes driving me nuts.
Okay, so now
do bad things.
Andre Iguodala was an interesting player. By the way, and you and I have talked about this before, and William Brad Alice brings this up a lot, along with maintaining that he has a friend that thought Lauren Woods would be Kevin Durant and not Lauren Woods in the NBA. But William Brad Alice made a good point that I don't know if I came up with or he came up with, that tell a fake U of A fan if they say that Andre Iguodala was their favorite player.
Right. I think that's a Brad thing.
That's a very good.
Let's give Brad credit.
Yeah, we're going to give William Brad. We've got to build the brand.
yes, we do.
William Brad Alice.
The Brad band.
But that was also a guy. That was also a guy too that was very easy to look at and project and say that's an NBA player. I mean, you just look at his arms were down to his arms. He had probably the longest wingspan of anybody I've ever seen here, and he was good at basketball. Now he was very lethargic here. You never came away from a game like my mom. My mom doesn't think DeAndre Ayton is good. And she didn't like him when he was here. She said, he just kind of loafs around. He doesn't do anything.
Sometimes when you're a superior athlete and it looks as easy as it is, it can be easy to mistake loafing for
sure.
Still getting to the same place on the floor and putting up good numbers.
Right. So
it's hard to say which of that. Maybe there's a little of both that went on with both of them.
But Iguodala was an easy one to project. Now I don't know that I necessarily was for sure that he'd be an NBA All-Star type for a long time, but he was an easy guy also to say that guy's got a lot. Now.
So I don't think it was much of a surprise when he left after year 2 either.
If you were going to bet on it, you go to BetOnline Sportsbook.
That's correct.
Now, the NBA draft's coming up. I'm not saying that Andre Iguodala is going to be a prop bet, but if there was a place that would have that
I wouldn't take that one. Is Andre Iguodala going to be picked in this year's NBA draft?
I would not either.
I would not.
But you know what? If there was, and you could bet the under on him not being, that's absolutely where I would go with that one. So again, keep that in the loop. BetOnline. Thanks for keeping it locked on Wildcats. All right, the Sean Miller era was interesting because you got a lot of one-and-done guys that, quite frankly, never really struck me as being great pro prospects, even though they were one-and-done. Now, I don't know if that's some because Miller didn't know how to use them, whatever the case may be. The one that stepped on campus immediately, and you're like, all right, well, he's going to be really good, and you won't be here long, was Ayton. Ayton was the one unicorn where it's like,
Right, sure.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, you're not.
You got him as a 1-year player, brought him in as a 1-year player. You paid him as oops, did I say that out loud? As a 1-year player. And then he was, able to make money at the next level. That's, of course, an allegation for hilarity and for hilarity and satire purposes. But yes, Ayton was clearly a guy who was going to be here for about 35 games for the university and move on to the next level. And you hoped you could get as much out of him as possible. And he put up excellent numbers, but Arizona's postseason wasn't good with him.
Right. You know what? For John Schuster, I'm Mike Luke. Thanks for keeping it locked on Wildcats.